Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Freelancers Tea Break. I've got a great interview coming up with Sally Farrant in this episode, but I wanted to jump on to say a couple of things. First of all, the sound is not ideal, but hopefully you'll be able to take some really great insights from it. I really would recommend listening to this because Sally has shared some fantastic advice about money and finances and taking the fear out of it. And Sally has a way of doing it which doesn't make it scary. It makes you almost want to dive into your accounts and deal with them. We also talk about pricing and about the whole debate around whether you should even list your pricing. Spoiler, we both think you should list your pricing, but it goes into a really good debate about that. The other reason I've got Sally on is because she is putting together some really great resources for the Freelance Business Lounge. And the Freelance Business Lounge is my membership, and the doors are opening again very soon at the end of March. Before then, I've got a 5-day challenge next week, if you're listening to this as it's come out. So this is Tuesday the 10th of March. So hopefully you'll be listening to this week. So next week, I've got a 5-day challenge, and you'll find the link below. And that's all about freelance habits. So it'll be 5 days of teeny tiny habits you can put in place to have a more successful freelance life. So I'm really excited to do that because I love making small tweaks that have huge impacts. So next week is the challenge. The week after, I'm opening the doors to the Freelance Business Lounge. I only do this every quarter, and one of the reasons I do it every quarter is because we have a 90-day goal setting session in the first few weeks of opening, so that everybody can get on board with what their goals are going to be for the next 90 days. And then you've got all the resources in the Freelance Business Lounge that will help you achieve those goals, plus weekly coaching calls within the group. They're only half an hour. There's 2 of them. So you can drop into those. There's also an accountability call during the week. There's so much stuff, and I'll be talking more about this next week. But just to give you a heads up that the Freelance Business Lounge is opening again very soon. If you're not already on the newsletter, go jump on that. The link is below, and then you'll get your alerts. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Sally, and we'll be chatting all about money and finances and how to stop being scared of them. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Freelancers Tea Break, and this is another episode where I'm not alone. Today I'm being joined by the absolutely wonderful Sally Farrant, who is a financial wizard or financial witch. I don't know which way it would be. But Sally has been in the Freelance Business Lounge for a little while, and I've also taken part in her, or I've been a member of her 5-day challenge that she's recently done. I'll let Sally introduce herself, and then I'll explain a little bit more about what we're going to chat about in this episode. So over to you, Sally.
Thanks very much. So I'm Sally, and I run Business Growth by Numbers. So I'm accountant by background, but I've always worked in businesses rather than as an external accountant. And I like getting stuck into people's numbers, and I help particularly small businesses to fall in love with their numbers and stop avoiding them, and make sure you actually know what's happening in your business.
Fantastic. We've been chatting for ages before we jumped on this podcast about everything and anything. But one of the things we really talked about is knowing your numbers, because I know this is a problem that ranges from brand new freelancers to experienced freelancers and people who have been doing it for years and years and years. It's so easy to ignore the money side of things and just hope it all works out, and it's such a dangerous position to be in, really, if you don't know your numbers and you don't know where you're going to be. And there's loads of things that come under that as well, which I think we're going to chat about a little bit more. But first of all, why is it so important to know your numbers?
Well, I think for lots of things, you need to know what your tax is going to be. You need to know whether you've got enough to live. You also need to know, so freelancing is all about feast and famine all of the time. We'd all like to think that we've all got regular work coming in all of the time, but actually the reality is that you do a lot of work one month and then virtually nothing another. And you need to know whether you've got enough money in your account to do that. but also to pay yourself. Otherwise, it's just a really, really expensive hobby. Lovely as it is, if you're not paying yourself, it's not a business. But also that you might have taken a reason for being a freelancer. So say you're a mum, you've decided that you want to work less, that you don't have to pay for childcare, you gave up your employed job. You also are not going to likely, certainly in the first instance, earn as much as you did before. And you need to look at kind of actually how many hours are you actually working. If you're taking all the holidays off, which is a huge amount of time because the kids are always off school, actually you're not working as much, but you're also not paying for childcare, and there's a quality of life aspect to it. So part of it is going, don't think about what you used to do and how it used to be, but also does it cover enough of the costs, you know, to make your business really work?
I think it's in, I mean, I've been freelance for 11 years, but it's probably only in the last 5 or 6 years when I've actually sat down and worked out how much I want to be earning each month and how to do that, and also how much I want to be earning over the year, because like you say, there's holidays to consider and there's feast and famine. Some months are better than others. January and February, for not all, but a lot of freelancers, can be a really tough couple of months, and I think it's very easy to just kind of have a very short-term view of only going from 1 month to the other to the next. Whereas having an overview of everything can make you feel a lot more in control. I think that's another thing that knowing your numbers, it makes you feel more in control and like you're taking your business seriously.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people start it because they're like, well, I want to do something. You know, again, a lot of, you know, mums say, well, I'm going to start again, or you decide that you want the flexibility, so you kind of, you know, you'll do these things, and then, you know, you're kind of like, well, actually it's not a hobby now, I need to really make some money out of it. But then you're like, well, I never did anything with numbers, how do I know? And maybe your husband, friend, dad is always going, oh, look, you know, this is brilliant, you've got all these numbers, and you're like, I don't even really know what you're talking about. And people get really, really flustered by numbers. I think it gives you a sense of control and a sense of confidence if you can go, well, actually, I do know what I'm roughly going to make this month, and I do know that that's enough. And actually, if it's not enough, I need to look at how I might. It gives you a bit of a view, I think, particularly if you're going to, you know, that it's going to be a lean couple of months. So say you don't work in the summer holidays, or like you say, January, February time, often tricky. You know, what are you going to do even now to look at the summer holidays, you know, 3, 4, 5 months out, and say, well, what can I do to make sure that the summer holidays, I don't have to worry about working, and I'm not trying to cram it all in around the kids in order that I can make the money. Do I need to have people on retainers and things like that, rather than kind of saying that I'll do tons and tons of, you know, hour by hour work in the holidays, for example.
Yeah, retainers are wonderful like that. So what do people need to do you think, to know the numbers?
So I think it is so the first thing is to get over all your fears about numbers. There are so many fears about numbers. Either you were terrible with numbers, bad at maths, there's a lot of that sort of thing, or you've got yourself in debt in the past. And I think it's really digging in a bit to why you're frightened. You know, if you're ignoring it and putting your head in the sand, why are you doing that? Is it because you kind of think, well, I know my business is not really making any money, I don't really want to admit it to anybody, including me? Or is it that actually you are scared of being in debt, or that there are just general, you know, there was never money when you were growing up, and therefore you're petrified of actually having money? You know, that can be a real thing as well. And then kind of actually sitting down every single day, open your bank account. Everybody's got an app on their phone with their bank account now. It's not difficult. Open it up and write down on a piece of paper, if you can't face a spreadsheet, write down what's coming in and what is going out. Make sure you're not paying for things that you don't use. So we all end up with loads of subscriptions for stuff. And are you still using the Zoom Pro or the Calendly or the, you know, and the website? You know, are you still paying for your website hosting that you've now moved away from? Something I was guilty of. I suddenly realized I've moved across and don't need it anymore. Yeah. And all of those things, are you definitely paying for things? Keep control of your costs, and kind of manage your business on the business you've got. So lots of people say, well, I'm investing in my business, and that is fine on a conscious level. And in fact, all of this is fine on a conscious level. So it's great if whatever you're doing is great if you're coming from a position of knowledge. So a lot of it is about knowing that actually you've got £5 in the bank and you've got to spend that on a mastermind or something that you wanted to do. You're going to upgrade your website, branding, whatever you want to do with it. But don't run your business as if you've got the income you want. You need to run it on the income you currently have, because otherwise you can get yourself in a real sticky situation where you've over committed yourself, and you can't run it then that way.
And income you have after tax and after national insurance and after expenses.
That's right, yes. So you just have to be really careful, because particularly if you're a sole trader, that is your, that it's all you. So you just have to be really careful not to over invest in your business. It's a tricky one, because I think getting that balance between investing in your business and getting some coaching and help and all of those sorts of things is tempting and necessary. In lots of cases, you often don't know what you're doing, but be careful of investing vast amounts of money when you're not sure that you're going to have the sales to kind of really back it up. But often you have to invest a little bit to help you grow as well. So but I think that having the knowledge of your numbers means that you can make that informed decision. If you say, well, I'm not going to take any money out of the business for 6 months because I'm investing in this, that's fine, because that's a deliberate decision. But if you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants all the time, it's not a great position to be in, and can be really, really stressful. A thin January can mean that you suddenly think, well, my business is not doing anything, and it can really affect how you feel about your business, how motivated you feel. We saw it in the group in kind of January, February. People are like, oh, I've lost my mojo. It's all really hard work. I haven't got enough clients. And actually, it's kind of knowing that you've got 3 months worth of costs in the bank. It's not a panic if you don't get any more clients, because somehow if you're desperate, you don't get any more clients anyway. It's only when you're like, oh, it's fine, that law of attraction and all those woo-woo things. But actually, that you need to know that your business is kind of solid enough to be able to do that. And without knowing your numbers, you can't tell.
I think as well, when people have a bit of excess cash in their business, it can burn a hole in their pockets, and suddenly all of these offers pop up, and you and I sell courses, so we get it, but equally it can feel like you constantly have to improve, and there are constantly things that you have to spend on. But actually, it feels much better sometimes to have savings than it does to be spending that money, and like you said, having that money aside.
Yeah, and I think that nature, they always say nature abhors a vacuum, and it's exactly true. When you've got money burning in your pocket, you've got to spend it, and it's like, actually, no, you need to know what you need to be sat there as a buffer with. You don't want to be down to your last £500 every single month. You want to have enough that you can say, well, actually, this month I'm going to have a bit more time off. You should not be saying, I can't take time off because my business can't support me taking time off. And I think that's particularly true if you've been freelance a very long time and you maybe don't have kids, or your kids are older, so you don't have to take the holidays off. I think it's really tempting to just work all the time. It's like, but is that what you kind of want? Is your business helping you to have the financial freedom you want? And do you need to do things like raise your prices? Because if you're looking at it going, well, I'm just not ever making any money, it's like, well, actually, you're either not working enough hours or enough things, or you don't have enough clients, and you need to do a bit more to get what you need out of it. Because I think that's often, we all underprice, and actually, if you're not making enough, then you need to put your prices up, and that's an uncomfortable feeling sometimes. But again, knowing those numbers and knowing what you need to make and what's covering your costs is really important.
And the costs have to cover sick pay as well for you, because this has cropped up in the group quite a bit recently, of people being ill and not being able to work and realizing that they don't have a buffer for that. It needs to be something that's included in your costs, in your fee. The price of having some money aside for sickness, having some money aside for, like, you and I both have children, so we, sometimes they're off school and you can't work for that day. It's almost harder when your children are off sick than if you're off sick, because you can probably do a bit of work if you're off sick.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that having insurances to help cover some of that stuff as well is really important. But yeah, if you're ill I was ill, I was off for 3 days, I couldn't do anything at all, and actually, there's a risk that can really make a massive dent in your income for a month. There aren't so many days to work in a month, and if you're doing a kind of time for hours job where lots of freelancers are, then actually not being there means you're not earning. So I think that it can make a really big difference, but making sure you've got enough of a buffer that if you are, and also that if you have to care for somebody who's ill, so that can often be, like you say, children, partner gets very poorly, they end up in hospital for a bit. You need to have kind of contingency plans for what you do if you can't work for 2 months or something. And scary as that is, and you don't want to think about those things, but like having a will, nobody wants to think about what happens, but actually these things do happen, and actually in a business where it's you need to have that sort of kind of backup, really.
Yeah, because there's not a lot we can do. I know there's some benefits and things you can apply for, but it's not really an ideal solution when you need to be saving.
No, and often if it's not a long-term thing, then often it can be more difficult to get those sorts of kind of payouts anyway.
And you never know when it's going to happen. There could be like a car crash or something like that, and unfortunately you have to plan for the worst. You
do. And I think that if your child was ill, or your child's only got to get chickenpox, you can be off for a week as well. So like, actually it's surprising. They don't have to be that ill sometimes to actually be off, or they get a tummy bug, you get a tummy bug, and suddenly a week's gone off a month. And so you just got to be really conscious of those sorts of pressures in your life,
I think coronavirus is kind of a timely reminder of that, really, that a lot of the schools are now shutting because of it. I was listening to a piece on the radio yesterday about how the impact it's having on a lot of the economy, but a lot of employers are now saying to their employees, you have to stay and work from home. At least one of the benefits is, as a freelancer, you can do that quite easily. But you get something like coronavirus, which you're not expecting, and that can have such an impact on everything. And
well, and if they close the school and you're trying to work at home, it's not very easy either. You're like, oh, hang on a minute. They're like, Mum, come and play. And you're like, no, I'm trying to work.
Yeah. Especially if they're, my son's around, he's just under 5 years old, so we're definitely at the look at this stage for everything. So there's no chance I get any work done.
Come and play football with me, Mummy.
Yeah. Can I watch from behind my laptop? Right, so pricing. I think a lot of people look at it the wrong way around. You need to know your numbers to know your pricing. And
yes,
I think a lot of people feel like it's the other way around, that you need to know your prices to then know your numbers. But you need to know what your outgoings are and what you actually need to earn in order to be able to set your prices.
Yeah, and I think that's right, because like, for example, when we're selling courses and things, you're looking at, maybe you get 10 people on a course that's priced at sort of 99 quid. Well, it's like, well, that's fine, but I've got to be doing something else as well. I can't, you kind of got to go, what is my cost base? So you need to know how much you're spending on all the different things that you've got to do, your website and your Zoom and your calendar and all the others, your email, whatever it is you're paying for, and then what you're paying yourself. So make sure that is included, because lots of people go, oh, I don't have to worry about paying myself. No, that's part of it. What do you want to pay yourself? All the other costs in your business, including things like marketing, any courses that you want to do, any memberships you're part of, that sort of thing. What does that add up to? And you probably need to look at it over a year, because you probably need to look at how much you want to work over a year. So when you're looking at it, you need to say, right, well, this is my cost base for a year. So say it's £1,000 a month. It should be more than that, frankly. But if it's £1,000 a month for ease, so it's like, well, I need to be making 12 grand. Well, actually, can I make that much in the number of hours that I want to work? If I divide that by the number of hours I want to work, so I actually sit there sometimes and say, how many days in a month am I planning to be? And this is client-facing work as well. So you mustn't think only about, you can't say, well, I work 5 days a week, because actually you don't work 5 days a week that you can bill. So it's like, well, okay, so I work 3 days a week that are client-facing, and 1 day's marketing, 1 day's admin or something like that. And so you need to sit there and add up how many client-facing days you do in a year, and it's not as many as you think. And then divide the number, and then take the costs, and then you need to divide that So you can take it down to a daily rate. So you've got some idea, the number of days or the number of hours if you want to do that.
That's such a
So
good
the
point
cost
about-
divided by, divide it up and see how much it is. And you'd be surprised how high that means your daily or hourly rate is. And then you should be charging more than your hourly rate. And then if you look at that, then the other side of it is to look at what the market will bear for that. Because actually, if you're saying, well, actually, I need to charge 500 quid a day for my time, and actually everybody else in your marketplace is charging half of that, you've obviously got to think about it. But then is your cost base too high? Do you need to offer a passive income product? Do you need to work more hours every month? There are things you can do to adjust it. But again, you need to know whether it really works from a cost point of view, particularly I think where you're very fluctuating in the work that you do. So either seasonal, like you say, January, February time, or that you work less because of you want to work less in the summer, you want to work because you've got kids, that sort of thing. You've got to really take that into account. I think people forget a lot of that stuff.
The idea of looking at expenses on an annual basis is a bit terrifying even for me. But yeah, you're absolutely right about, I think it's very easy to assume that we're working 5 days a week. We are, but that's not being paid for by clients. So I think what you're saying about 3 days a week is very interesting. I think if we were all quite honest with ourselves, it'd be quite an interesting number we came up with.
Well, and also the number of time that you're doing discovery calls with clients, or you're doing networking things, or you're having coffee with a peer. You're doing or you're spending a day, like I try and spend a day every quarter doing goal setting and writing, all your content. What about all your social media? All of that takes loads of time, including responding to and looking at all your social media. When do you do that? And actually, you can't. If you're billing by the hour or by the day, you can't be taking that into account in your pricing. All that time has to come out, and all of that takes much more time than you realise or think as well. You think it doesn't take very much time, but actually it takes a lot of time to do all that admin and marketing and keeping your business going whilst you're still working with clients.
So now that we've terrified everybody who's listening, let's talk about some tools that we can use to track those numbers. So I know, first of all, you have your 5-day challenge, and you are going to be putting together some exciting spreadsheets for the business lounge as well, which will
I'm not sure that exciting and spreadsheet go in most people's vocabulary.
I think you underestimate the love of a good spreadsheet for the listeners, because I know quite a few over in the Facebook group definitely who love a good bit of spreadsheet porn. So that kind of thing goes down really well. But I guess you've also got some of the new banks as well, which the new busy bank. Who is it that you're with? Is it Starling?
I'm with Starling. So I really like Starling. They're free. I don't think you should have to pay for your business banking. Interestingly, I have seen some people mention that they're not very sure about the challenger banks. I think don't keep ridiculous amounts of money in it like you would with your personal. But if it's your business bank account and something like mine, you're basically paying yourself out most of it anyway. So you're not. I don't think there's a big risk in those. But I love Starling. It's free, so I think you shouldn't have to pay for banking. But you want to just check. So I do know, because are you with Coconut?
I'm moving to Coconut very shortly. Yeah.
So the problem with Coconut, it doesn't link to any accounting software. So if you've got accounting software, it doesn't link to like Free Agent or Xero, whereas like Starling does. And that for me is a really big draw for it, that it links into the accounting systems that I want to use, so that you don't have to do all that manually. So that's a really useful thing. There are other ways, obviously, with Coconut, but
and does Starling have the pots where you can put your money?
Yeah, they call them spaces, but yes, and I really like that. You put your 30% over there,
and then if you know your numbers, like you should be after this podcast, you then can allocate like spaces for the different expenses, or just a general one where you know how much should be going out, and you put that money aside, because then you know that the money that you've got left after you put them in all those pots or spaces, you can take the majority of that out and put it in your personal account if you're a sole trader. And
you can allocate it and then you allocate it as salaries and dividends if you're a limited company. but yeah, I think it's important if you can separate. If you've got an easy way to do that, then separate it out. If you don't have an account like that, definitely put. If you're a sole trader, definitely put your 30% of your net income at the end of every month into another account. If you're a limited company, you should be putting away the 19% corporation tax and then about 15% dividend tax in your own account. So to make sure that you're ready for the tax return deadline.
Does it work with ISTTT? Because I know I use Monzo personally, which is another one, but it's not a personal one. And in that one, on a certain date each month, I have money that goes into different pots. So for example,
I'm sure that you can. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's quite easy if you're naturally disorganised like I am. It's really useful to have something else that automates it out for you.
And because I really love something called Profit First, which is where you actually say, when you get your income in every month, that this is how you allocate it, and you allocate it in percentages. And even if you only put 1% to profit, which is extra to you paying yourself, so you say, well, this is what I'm going to pay myself, this is what my expenses are. And even if you put a tiny amount, you should put some amount aside every month, and then look to increase that over time. I won't go into massive detail. I love Profit First, but yeah, it's kind of actually that you shouldn't be looking to take your profit after everything else. You should really be looking to do it first. But it's a bit of a mindset shift. It's a really good book if you wanted to read it. It is called Profit First. But yeah, so it's you are not supposed to be the last bit at the end of the chain.
There is so much mindset stuff around money, isn't there?
There is. I love Denise Duffield Thomas. I love her Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and kind of like, well, what do you think is going to happen if you're rich? You know, does everybody think that you're going to be a bitch and a diva? And it's like, well, yeah, actually, Pete, that's kind of a bit how it kind of is presented a little bit. But then you see it giving away your money power. So someone like Katie Price, so Jordan, in the book actually she talks about that somebody else handles her money. I'm like, you can't do that. And then in December or whatever it was, she was declared bankrupt. It's like, you can't hand over your money power. Only you know what's going on in your business, and you should not be giving that to somebody else. If somebody else does the calculations and does the work for you, that's fine. You don't have to do all this yourself. You can pay somebody to do it, but you need to know what is going on in your business, because you are the chief exec and the buck stops with you. If something goes wrong, it's all on you. And the same is true with the numbers, I think.
I think that one of the other things she chats about is how people who win the lottery often lose the money very quickly because they've still got bad money beliefs and habits. And by suddenly having an amount of money doesn't mean everything's sorted. It just means that they've got more money to lose with those negative habits and those negative beliefs. Yeah,
and actually having more money doesn't solve your money problems, because literally you just spend it.
Yeah, it gives you more.
Yeah, it just gives you a bigger problem, or you give more away. So yeah, I think the mindset stuff is absolutely fascinating, and kind of digging really into what your attitude to money and your blocks, and particularly if you're putting up your price and you're like, oh, I don't feel, people won't pay that. But there is a thing about being too cheap, and if you're cheap or free, people don't value the service that they're getting. So you give somebody something, they almost certainly never do the course, turn up for something. They're much less likely to turn up for something, even if it's only relatively cheap. They will still be more likely to turn up if they're charged something. And actually, if you're too cheap, people go, well, there's not really any value in that. So you've got to price keenly, but for what you're offering. If you're offering great service and value, then price accordingly. I think price is one of the biggest sticking points for people, is being able, and putting up your price is often a very awkward conversation. That and chasing debts.
Oh, yes. I still don't enjoy doing that. I don't think anyone enjoys doing it. But one of the things we also chatted about before we jumped to the call was a weird kind of guilt that creative freelancers quite often have about charging for something they enjoy doing.
They enjoy doing, and also stuff they find easy. So there's a thing, I find this easy. It's like, well, somebody else is prepared to pay for it because they don't. Particularly if you're creative, Like for me, paying somebody to do something creative is absolutely a complete no-brainer. I have no creative bone in my body, but actually, I'm very happy to outsource stuff like that. Whereas, actually, when it comes to numbers, I obviously don't outsource any of it, but lots of people do outsource that sort of thing. And it's like, actually, you know, the fact that you find it easy, so I find numbers easy, but loads of people don't. But that doesn't mean that I should charge less. But it is still a thing where you're kind of like, well, I can do this kind of standing on my head. But a lot of that is the experience you've got. You know, I've got 20 years in quite big corporate backgrounds of all sorts of types and sizes. And actually, you're kind of getting that now the other side. And actually, yes, some of this stuff is maybe less complicated than stuff I've worked on in the past. But actually, the fact that I find it easy means that it's the right thing for me to be doing, not that I shouldn't be charging for it. But it is, I think it's a real challenge to get that kind of, well, I find this easy. And it's like, well, brilliant.
Yeah.
That means you found the right thing for you.
And I think actually a really common mistake I've seen is that freelancers don't get really super clear on how much they're charging. So I think I used an example earlier of a hairdresser or a plumber. They know how much they're going to charge, or a beautician. They know what their charges are for a service. There's no wiggle room. There's no negotiation. That's what they charge.
Yeah.
Whereas if you kind of charge different people, different rates, and in different situations, it can be really, really hard then to quote people. Whereas if you know very specifically what you charge, how much they get, or what they get, obviously there are situations where that can vary depending on what services you're offering, but if you can then allocate prices for how much add-ons are, it just makes it so much easier to then quote for this sort of thing.
And I think that having packages for your services, particularly in creative stuff and things like that, is really important. And like you say, right, well, this is what I will do. So if you're in social media, I will do 3 blog posts, I will do 20 posts, or whatever, you know, social media posts, or whatever it is, but this is what this costs. The next level up is this. And yes, you can talk to people about the bit in between, but you say, well, I either offer this, or I offer this, or I offer this. And turning it into packages where it's not such a time thing. So you don't say, well, I'll work for you half a day a week every week. What I will do is I will deliver this. It's all about what you deliver. And then you can choose when you do that work and how you time it. I mean, obviously some stuff is time critical, but you know, as a general rule, you don't have to say, well, I'm working for you this hour, this day. And I think that makes a really big difference to it. And also making your pricing easy and going, right, well, it's this, you know, and having kind of tiers and saying, well, look, if you want a cheap option, this is it, but this is what this involves, and be careful of giving too much away for that. But then this is my main package, which is I will do this, this, and this for you. And then there's a premium one where I'll do a bit more, you know, I'll do a bit more for you. And if you want bespoke, then you just get in touch with me and I'll find out. But if you've got 3 or 4 packages that people can pick from, suddenly it makes life easier. They kind of know what they're getting. And I think you can do that for almost all industries, even those that seem more bespoke. I think it is kind of going, right, well, what do people mostly ask for? And you can always have a get in touch button if this is not what you want kind of thing. But it gives people an idea of where your pricing is and what low end mean. And you don't have to have the conversation, which is, you know, if they get in touch with you, then the conversation is about, well, which level do you want? They don't ring you if their budget is too high, is too low for the lowest level that you offer, because actually you're not the right person for them. And if they're not the right thing, they're not your ideal client, which is always hard to turn away.
I know there's such an argument for and against it, but I personally am a big fan of people listing their prices on their website because it just makes it so much easier for both of you.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I've been on there's a couple. I'm part of a group at the moment. We're, you know, kind of doing stuff like launching type stuff. And she doesn't put her prices on. I said, but you're encouraging me to take a discovery call. And actually, whilst that's great, if your package is $5,000, I don't want and can't afford to pay that. If your package is $1,000, I might do that. And actually, if I've not worked with you before, I don't know where you are on the spectrum sometimes. And I think that, so this is even on a sales page, she's not mentioning how much the program is. And I'm like, if I'm working with her before, I can probably guess roughly where it's going to be, but I'm interested that actually it's not anywhere. And I think that, you know, because I said, well, you know, if you get that far, you know, not being able to afford it is is a money block partly. And I'm like, well, it's sort of, I mean, it partly is, but it's also a factual correct that actually, if I don't have £5,000, I haven't got £5,000. And I don't want to get into debt for money that I don't have. And I also don't want to waste someone's time by having a call with them for half an hour where it's quite clear that I'm never going to be able to afford their service.
I think that if you don't think you can afford it, that's a money block. That's being thrown around a lot at the moment. It's not something I personally agree with, and for the same reasons that you said, because if it's a small amount of money, maybe it is a money block, or maybe it's just not the right fit, or maybe it's because the person selling the service hasn't quite got the right sales page and hasn't nailed in the problem quite. But I really hate seeing people suggest to other people that they find the money by going and getting a credit card or something like that, or getting themselves fast into debt to do that kind of thing. And I just think if it is a huge investment like that and they are not in a financial position to invest at that time, it might just be it's not the right fit for them at the moment. Then they need to come back when they do have that money. But yeah, it's a bit of a pet peeve for me for people to throw back at people. You know, not only can you not afford me, but that's because of your money blocks. That's not anything else.
No, and it's like actually part of it is that I need to manage my business cautiously. I don't have certainty, you know, maybe I don't have certainty of income that in 3 months' time that actually £5,000 won't be too much. And I think that, you know, I think that if it's less than say £500, then probably that's about a money block, you know, because I think probably, you know, particularly if it answers something that you really need help with. But I think anything above that, you're like, well, actually, I can't. And also, you've got to think about whether you're going to spend the time on these things. But yeah, I think that having prices on your website really useful because it gives people a gauge. Because actually, if you are too expensive, that's fine. They're not your ideal client. You don't want them to waste their time or yours. By getting in touch with you and saying, well, actually, I can only really afford half your fees. And it's for them to decide whether they can afford you, not the other way around. And you can decide whether you're a premium offering or whether and you can do stuff online, which means you're cheaper, or you can do group stuff, which also means that generally it's cheaper. You know, your one-to-one's obviously most expensive. And I think that, you know, that can really open it up, particularly if people don't really need to pay a premium for what you're offering. You know, my one-to-one service, most people don't need that level of support, really. Actually, things like my course are perfectly fine for most people, so they pay that level of service, and that's great.
Oh, I feel like we've both got loads of us.
I hate it when there are prices on the website. I really hate it. I have no idea whether I can afford you or not, and actually I won't ask.
Yeah,
it often means you don't ask.
Yeah, and if a sales page something says click to apply with no indication of the price, I just won't.
Well, I just think I'm probably wasting somebody's time.
Yeah. There's a whole other podcast actually in that kind of thing. But anyway, where can we find you online, and what are you currently offering at the moment?
So you can find me online. I'm on LinkedIn, just Sally Farrant, and I'm also on Facebook. So I have a business page which is Business Growth by Numbers. And I have a free Facebook group, which is Strength in Numbers with Sally Farrant, which you can just come and join anytime. We do all sorts of stuff. I put, you know, regular content in there and run around my 5-day challenge and stuff like that in there. And currently, you can. My course is available all the time, which is Becoming a Numbers Ninja. Which is about getting the stuff we've talked about, getting your numbers in a row, getting all the stuff lined up so that you can actually stop burying your head in the sand. And it guides you through. And I do it with as little jargon as I can get away with, as few spreadsheets as I can get away with, and all the videos are very short so that it's not overwhelming. Because I think a lot of people find numbers stuff really overwhelming. And actually, if you're like, oh, I just don't get that, you just go, well, I just don't want. So it's trying to make it so it's not too complicated and not overwhelming and not too much in accounting jargon.
Fabulous. And obviously you're going to have some very exciting resources in the Freelance Business Lounge, which is going to be opening at the end of March, so I'll have a bit more information on that soon as well. But thank you so much. It's been really lovely to natter all about pricing and knowing your numbers. And I think you said before the call, it's from being an ostrich to an owl. And I think that's what this is all about. It's just becoming more aware of your numbers so you take the fear out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it's been lovely. Thank you ever so much for having me.
No worries.